Well, folks, we're going to get started here, and I'm very thrilled to introduce to you our speaker, Dr. Tish Oney. She's had a multifaceted career as a singer, recording artist, professor of voice, best-selling author, composer, arranger, conductor, and musicologist. Performances in a lot of venues, U.S. Army Jazz Ambassadors, many symphonies, including Detroit Symphony, Williamsburg Symphony, and many others. She's shared her expertise numerous times with NATS, but also through NPR, PRI, Sirius XM, and many more. Her second book is called Jazz Singing, A Guide to Pedagogy and Performance, which was just published in 2022. I'm very excited. I want to check that out. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Dr. Tish Oney. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for that great introduction and for inviting me to present today. I'm very excited. My book just came out last month. It has not even been on the shelves for a whole month yet. So you're getting the first introduction to it, and hopefully a lot of what I'm talking about will be helping you understand what's in the book, and uh, I hope that it will be a good resource for you. Um, so let's see, we'll start with my sharing. Oh, wait. Yes, sharing my screen. And I will, there we are. Can everybody see that PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking today about teaching jazz in the voice studio. And I found as a jazz educator, as a voice teacher, there was a real need for some literature on voice pedagogy in this field. I started the project about 5 years ago, writing as a culmination of my career as a professional jazz singer and a jazz pedagogue, a voice teacher too. And so my aim for this presentation and for the book was to offer a comprehensive textbook for jazz voice, to fill in areas of education that may be lacking for people who are jazz singers that may not have gone to school for music, or who may not know a lot about their vocal anatomy, or for voice pedagogues who are interested in teaching jazz, but they don't have much jazz background, if any. The other aims are to offer ideas for helping the readers create their own exercises from what they already do, and to help working singers enhance their performance. My target audiences there are a whole lot of them. It's for working jazz singers, beginning or advanced. Teachers of singing from all genres can benefit from a lot of the information here. Students majoring in jazz voice pedagogy students who are going to want to teach and or sing jazz. Instrumentalists often lead vocal ensembles and are hired by colleges to direct vocal jazz ensembles because they are a built-in accompanist for the ensemble, but often I have discovered they don't have a lot of training in choral music or in caring for voices. So this book is trying to take care of some of that education for them. It's for choir directors as well. There's a chapter on jazz choir and vocal jazz ensembles. And also for fans of jazz singing and jazz history buffs. And the reason that I thought about including these folks would be a good idea is because peppered throughout the book are examples and discussions about how famous, wonderful, legendary jazz singers from the 20th century approached all of these pedagogical areas, like resonance, like microphone technique, like diction, articulation, dynamics, and phrasing. And so there's a lot of information about the greats, about Nancy Wilson, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Nat King Cole, Mel Torme, and many, many others throughout the book, so that we can see that there's not one right way to teach jazz, but the greats had their own unique style and approach to technique and different stylisms, as we call them in the NATS auditions. If you're a NATS commercial adjudicator, you are aware of the term stylism for the commercial category. So I also want to let you know that the table of contents is available online at my publisher's webpage, and that's rowman.com, and Mark has that available to put into the chat. Okay, and then there's rationale. So there's a student need for a comprehensive textbook. I was teaching a vocal jazz masterclass for graduate students at a university, and they came around me, and the purpose of the class was to fill in any education that they felt they needed, like arranging and simple playing, accompanying themselves, and scales that maybe they didn't know about, that their compatriots in the instrumental, they knew, and they wanted to work on them. And the main thing they wanted to know was how the voice worked. And I was shocked that they didn't have any kind of training available for this. But then I was a science major as an undergrad, and so my understanding of anatomy kind of just came with me, and I realized at this point that we needed a jazz singing resource that covered that too, along with some great advice about how we can sing in the style. They really didn't know much about their instruments, so I thought that that was something we really had to have, merging science of singing with pedagogy that's tried and true from some of my favorite pedagogues: Richard Miller, Burton Coffin, Barbara Dosher. So many great voice pedagogues have been studied by me and by my students through the years. And I just knew that the teachers of jazz voice and of classical voice needed a resource for jazz teaching. Also, many working singers needed help with voice care, voice hygiene, and career guidance. And my rationale for writing the book, the final one, was I also wanted to write a book kind of like the song, the book that you may know, called Master Singers. How does that go? Master Singers. I should have prepared that. But it's a book about interviewing a lot of singers and finding out how they approach technique. Well, my editor decided I should include that in this comprehensive book, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, that's a whole different project, but okay, I will try to incorporate as much of that as I can. So great jazz singers' techniques and approaches are compared and discussed and thought about in the book. So moving on to how we can practically use jazz concepts in our voice studios, the first thing that I would say is modify your favorite exercises, the ones that you already use. So you can start with a familiar classical vocalise and then add a swing style to it, syncopated, and some neutral scat syllables. So let me demonstrate. Let's see. You can take that more or less neutral stylistically exercise and add some syncopation, some scat syllables, and make it swing. Do va 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 do, and then come back down. Do va 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 do. Then you teach your students that if you make that a straight eighth note feel, you can modify it to a bossa nova style. Do va 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 do. Do va 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 do. And notice that even though it's straight eighth note, it does not sound like the first classical vocalese that I sang. It still sounds like jazz somehow, even though it's not syncopated. And then you can have your students switch from a classical approach in the original exercise to the modified swing version, and then to the bossa version, and then back again and back and forth, so that they can feel the difference and sense the differences in style within their own instrument. So a fun fact here, it's not really an aside, it's related, that I wanted to share. My former undergraduate voice student, Jessie Mueller, yes, the Broadway star Jessie Mueller, once came to her lesson with me after watching me perform jazz and asked me, that vocal scat improvisation you do, can you teach me how to do that? And I smiled at her and I said, of course I can teach you how to do that. So later she used the song that I taught her as her audition piece, one of the songs that I taught her, as her audition piece for the Jazz Broadway show, her first Broadway show, On a Clear Day You Can See Forever. So she got cast as the lead opposite Harry Connick Jr. because she knew one jazz audition piece really well. So you never know what your song and what you're exposing your students to in your lessons as far as genre expansion can do for their careers. For Jessie, it started off her very successful Broadway career. The next slide talks about scale exercises. We can assign scales to jazz majors. Jazz instrumental majors have to learn scales. So do jazz voice majors, but not just major scales. It requires scale knowledge and prowess at performing jazz scales. So because jazz singers have to develop their inner ear like everyone else, but in order to improvise, they have to be really understanding the harmonic structure and the melodies and the bass line, the root motion of all the songs that they perform. So we help them do this by introducing scalar testing, really, like music, like your training class, either in juries or in voice lessons somehow. So for instance, I used to teach jazz students a few new scales every semester and have them be responsible for it and have them sing particular repertoire that could exercise those scales. So at the freshman level, maybe you could have them learn major and the three minor scales, natural, melodic, and harmonic, test them often and have them sing not just the scales, but patterns, like the pattern that I just sang a couple slides ago. Their sophomore year, you can add the blues scale, the chromatic scale, and pentatonic scales. The junior year, you might add the whole tone scale and the Gregorian modes because jazz musicians use them all. And in senior year or for graduate students, you can add bebop scales, the major bebop scale, the Mixolydian bebop scale, and the Dorian bebop scale, which classical voice majors probably don't know, and other scales that are specific to jazz, like the half step up melodic minor scale, which you use over dominant harmony if you really want to wow your audience. As long as you can do it in tune, it's going to wow your audience. And then we go to what I call the neutral baseline voice. What is the neutral baseline voice? It's the free, healthy, well-supported tone that is not influenced by any particular genre or style. It exhibits balanced resonance with a mix of both chest and head dominant qualities. It should be used whenever vocalizing, warming up, learning a new piece, or rehabilitating the voice after illness. Starting with a healthy baseline ensures that a singer can add and subtract vocal colors or modify qualities, add ornaments and stylisms without leaning so heavily on them that they can't sing in other styles. The neutral baseline helps singers come back to a healthy starting point every day. So the neutral baseline voice is what we voice pedagogues are trying to help our students find. The voice is not influenced by genre or style. It contains balanced resonance with a mix of chest and head. It's used when warming up, learning pieces, rehabilitating from illness, or whenever you are just doing a vocal check-in, seeing how your voice feels on a particular day. You use your normal neutral baseline voice that's not colored for any particular style. And then you can add to that and modify the baseline's vocal colors depending on the style that you desire to sing. Next, we move on to finding repertoire and arranging a lead sheet. The resources that I like to use include real books. The Sure publisher puts out a great one. Well, they put out a great series. The one that I love to start with is called The Standards Real Book by Sure Music Company. And it is the one that has the most lyrics in the book. So I start with that one. And then there's also the Real Book Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. It just keeps on going. They continued to add to that series. It is a very popular series. And one of the reasons I love it is because in order to come up with the chord progressions for these songs, the editorial board for that book hashed it out among jazz scholars and jazz instrumentalists. Well-known jazz musicians were locked in a room, and you can picture it. And they hashed out all these arrangements of these standards until they really agreed that this is how they go. This is the right chord progression. And so there's a lot of fake books that don't have really very good chord progressions, but I love the Sure publisher real books because they really worked hard on making sure that they have excellent chord changes most of the time. The Jamie Aebersold sing-along books with CD and or downloads online now are excellent resources. There's literally hundreds of those, and so he has recorded songs for students to learn that have 5 or 6 choruses all the way through the song 5 or 6 times with a rhythm section, a professional rhythm section to accompany you. And you can just work on your stylisms and your improvisation and learning your tunes that way. Also, Accompanist is a great resource that we in NATS know about, and they've got a library of songs that jazz musicians can study and Great American Songbook standards. One thing you want to do when you are working on a lead sheet from any resource is to consider the key. It needs to be in the speaking range for the singer. And so often the standard keys that are accepted today as the standard keys were written in Frank Sinatra's vocal range. And they are his preferred keys. So what that means is if you can sing in the baritone, second tenor range, you might not have to transpose a lot of these songs from the real books. But if you are a woman, generally, even altos, generally you're going to need to transpose it because it's going to feel too high in the way that it appears on the page because it's written an octave above where Frank Sinatra was singing. So that's all. It's not as complicated as it sounds, but generally speaking, the women are going to need to know that they're going to need to transpose a lot of these songs to more singable keys that are comfortable in the speaking range. And the reason is because in the jazz style, we generally don't sing up in the stratosphere during the bulk of the song. We can improvise up there, certainly, and Ella certainly did. Sarah Vaughan certainly did. Lots of great. Betty Carter comes to mind. Lots of great singers have done that, but the bulk of the song is in a spoken range key for those singers because that's what jazz demands. Common song forms for standards are AABA form and ABAB forms. They're often 32 bars, especially if they're in the real books, the fake books, if they're jazz standards. And so I've given you a couple of options here for beginning arranging songs for your students out of these books. You could start with an introduction that might be the last 4 measures of the song. It often is. It's a basic, easy way to start with the last 4 bars. And then the head. Now, the head is akin to a da capo in opera. So it's when we go back to the beginning, but not the introduction beginning and not the opening verse beginning, which many songs have from the Great American Songbook era. So the head is where the song that everybody knows starts. Then that's followed by a solo instrumental chorus or a scat chorus or both. You could have 2 choruses there, have the pianist take a chorus all the way through and the singer take a chorus, or you can trade 4s, which is what we call taking turns every 4 measures, switching from the pianist to the singer, back to the pianist every 4 bars, and vice versa. There's a lot of ways that you can construct your solo choruses to make it interesting. Then you go back to the head, generally, which is the voice with variation the second time. And then you have your coda. Some people call them outros. I was taught that outro is not a word in jazz. Sorry, Nats folks, but that was my education. Never use the word outro. It doesn't exist. But there's different, there's different fields of thought about these things. I call it a coda, which is really my arranged ending, or just it can be a 3-time tag of the last phrase, or a vamp, like a 1 to 5 7 to 1 to 5 7 vamp, over which you can improvise until you decide together as a ensemble that you want to end the song. Another option is to have your introduction and then your head, which is 1 chorus, 32 measures, followed by half an instrumental chorus, which is generally 16 bars, and then the voice enters for the second half, which would be at the bridge for an AABA form song, or at A again for an ABAB form song. So when you're singing in jazz, as with anything else, you need to know where you are and where you are in the form by counting, by recognizing the chord progression, and we'll get to some of that too today, the harmonic understanding and how to build that for your students. And then you, again, stick your coda on the end, and that's a very easy way that you can start introducing jazz pieces in your own studio. So then we move on to styles of improvisation. There's text-based improvisation, which I like to start with for students because they tend to be just fine singing the text, singing the melody as it was written, learning the song as the composer wrote it. So text-based improvisation is where you leave the text the same, but you change the notes and or rhythms. So if I were to demonstrate this, I might use Harry Warren's There Will Never Be Another You. There will be many other nights like this, and I'll be standing here with someone new. There will be other songs to sing, another fall, another spring, but there will never be another you. So I was pretty close to staying within the confines of how the composer originally wrote it that time. If I were to do a text-based improvised chorus, I might try this. There will be many other nights like this, and I'll be standing here with somebody new. There will be other songs to sing, another fall, another spring, but there will never be another you. So that's an idea that you can bring to your voice studio. Start students on text-based improvisation because they can lean on the words. The next idea is melodic embellishment, and have them sing the melody, scat the melody until they really know the melody well, and then they can depart from the melody little by little. Then moving into scat improvisation, that's something that we can work on with neutral scat syllables, and you can use do and boo and va and do va do va do va do, or do ba do ba do. Generally, you want to remember that scat improvisation came about when Louis Armstrong got tired on a recording, and his lips got tired, and he was playing his cornet, and he decided, I don't want to play. I've got to rest my mouth, and I'm going to sing instead. So I'm gonna sing what I would have played on the trumpet, and I'm gonna scat it. So that's how scat began. Is Louis Armstrong just deciding to imitate himself playing the trumpet. So scat is really imitation, vocal imitation of an instrumental sound. So whatever that means to you gives you some latitude. You don't have to use do and ba and boo, but they're really good places to start when you don't know what syllables to use. And I get that. That's probably the most common question I get as a jazz educator. What syllables do I use? So I start people with 4, and then move outward, expand from there. Another style is to use long tones. And I like long tone improvisation, particularly when I am doing something modal. And I will demonstrate this over a song that's an original of mine called Waltz for Ellie, which is a modal song. It's in the Dorian mode. And with modes, long tones tend to work really well. And they tend to be easier for singers because you can basically use any of the modal pitches at any point in the modal song. And then that long tone can transition you into a scat break, which I started to do at the end of that. Then there's vocalese, which is another style, and it's really something that John Hendricks and Lambert Hendricks and Ross and the Manhattan Transfer have done a lot of. It's where John Hendricks really started this campaign for vocalese, where he would take a transcription of an instrumental solo and add words to it. And so that's what vocalese is. It's words added to an instrumental improvised solo. It's very difficult. It tends to be in the bebop style, very fast, and it's worth listening to. Lambert, Hendricks, Ross, and the Manhattan Transfer do these. Four Brothers is an excellent example of a vocalese that I would recommend that you listen to. Then there's lyric improvisation, which is something that the blues shouters used to do. They would have a recording session and they wouldn't necessarily have music prepared. They came and they rhymed their poetic lyrics on the spot. And Bessie Smith was very famous for this. She wrote the lyrics, improvising the lyrics in the studio to hundreds of blues songs. So she's somebody definitely worth studying and listening to if you want to learn the art of rhyming lyric improvisation, particularly over the blues progression. Then there's free improvisation, and I'm not going to get very far with this today. There's some information about that in the book, but it's for more advanced students, more advanced professional singers. It's where you kind of take the boundaries and move them even further out, and you start singing further and further away from the harmonic structure that your ear is begging to stay within. And so how do we begin improvising? I recommend starting with the melody. Learn it precisely and accurately. You can add in ornamentation and style. Then you can scat the melody precisely. Learn the root motion after that. What is root motion? It's what the bass player plays, sometimes walking, sometimes half notes, sometimes jumping around. Learn to sing the roots of every chord in your piece. The pitch names come first, and then scat syllables. So if I were to do this with There Will Never Be Another You, for example, what I have my students do is ask them to sing the pitch names, the names of the pitches on the pitches. So like this. B flat, A, D, G, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, B flat, etc., etc., etc. And that helps them to know what the band is playing, what the harmonic structure is, and then they can add to that by scatting arpeggios of the chord progression over that well-learned root motion bass line that they practiced. And check them at the piano, and check yourselves at the piano. You can use the piano as a guide, but for developing a jazz ear on your instrument, a lot of times the best advice is to spend some time at least singing a cappella and trusting your ear to be keeping track of where you are in the key center and be able to sing your songs without accompaniment. It is so important for singers to be able to do that, especially jazz singers. The inner ear the development of the inner ear is extremely important. So then I have the singers sing the root motion on scat syllables. So the same thing, you would just do do, 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 do. Okay? And I'm not using accompaniment because I'm making sure that I know where I am in the chord progression just with my own voice and my own brain. Sometimes your band needs to lean on you. That's happened in my band a lot of the time, and I have to be up to it. And I can't be up to it if I don't know the progression and the melody and the lyrics and where everybody else is supposed to be so that I can guide them And I always teach my students that the singer who's fronting the band, it's called fronting the band, has to be at least as adept at playing their own instrument as the other members of the band. Ideally, that's what your goal is, so that you can lead them, truly lead them. I'd say don't stop until you can smoothly sing all the root motion from the beginning to end of your piece. This represents an entire pool of notes that you can use along with a melody, which is a whole different pool of notes for improvisational ideas. So you've got the melody notes you can use, and then you've got the root motion notes you can use, and you've established that you've got the arpeggiations of the chord progression that you can use too. Then you start listening for the primary tones in each chord. The thirds and the sevenths are the most important notes in any jazz chord because they define the quality of the chord. So learning to find those roots and then find the thirds and then find the sevenths can help you to become a great jazz improviser, but you can't do that if you don't know the roots and a little bit of theory related to your song. You need to know the chord progression of your song. This is where music theory and ear training and performance all meet at a crossroads. This is where it becomes relevant that singers took music theory. It also ensures that singers hear the chord changes in their inner ear while and before the chords are played. And that's really important. So then you can also use common practice patterns like 2-5-1, which is a very, 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 very common progression in jazz. You can use the 12-bar blues progression also. You can use rhythm changes after some of those things are mastered. Rhythm changes are I Got Rhythm chord changes. So the song by George Gershwin, I Got Rhythm, has become known as rhythm changes in jazz circles because there are so many contrafacts, which are alternate songs written to those same harmonic progressions in I Got Rhythm. You want to then work toward harmonic mastery using chord extensions after you've got the 1, 3, 5, and 7. And a word to the wise, in jazz arranging and in jazz in general, there's almost always going to be a 7th in every chord. So a major chord, unlike in classical music, a major chord is going to have a 7th that makes it sound like jazz. Right? So that's a C major 7th. If you lower the top note, the 7th, you've got a dominant 7th. And then if you lower the 3rd from there, you've got a minor, C minor 7th. So understanding how to mutate around those different tonal centers with the same root is another really good skill to have and to teach your students how to do. So chord extensions involve the term extension means extended above the octave. So the 9th is above an octave away from the root. The 11th, the 13th. Those are more advanced concepts, but they're covered a little bit in the jazz singing book as well. And for more information about some of this advanced theory, I recommend Shelley Berg's wonderful book, Jazz Improvisation, The Goal Note Method. It's a wonderful resource for every jazz musician. Syllables, as I said before, can be just basic, just a few. Use a few at first so that you don't get tongue-tied with syllables. You can use do and ba and boo and va. And I'll give you a little hint that I discovered through listening to Ella Fitzgerald's Scat for many years. Open versus closed vowels. There are acoustic properties in open vowels and acoustic properties in closed vowels, as we know, and we can capitalize on those to maximize the swing feel. If we've got time at the end, I'd be glad to talk more about that, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep on going. But that's a fascinating thing that I learned, I discovered, and I describe it in the book. And I learned it from Ella, just from noticing what she was doing. And she apparently knew it already, but I'm gonna leave you with that, and hope you want to hear more. Jazz voice techniques that you can use include back phrasing. Okay, back phrasing happens when the singer begins a lyric after or sometimes before the musical phrase begins and makes the timing work. It's a style of improvisation, and it plays with the rhythm and timing of phrases. So let's see, we're using the same example, There Will Never Be Another You, and I'll try to back phrase it. There will be other nights like this, and I'll be standing here with somebody new. There will be other songs to sing, another fall, another spring, but there will never be another you. Okay, so back phrasing is sort of ignoring, it seems like I'm ignoring the musical phrase start and end, but I'm not ignoring it. I am really walking on two fences. My left foot is walking on the fence of the harmonic rhythm that the band is playing, and my right foot is walking on the fence of my lyric delivery rhythm, which is different. I'm playing with the time, and I'm pushing and pulling it. I'm arriving a little late or arriving early. And some people that do this really, really well are Peggy Lee and Nancy Wilson. And Billie Holiday was one of the first to do it. She learned it from Lester Young, who is a tenor sax player who used to do it on his instrument. And he taught Billie Holiday how to do back phrasing. And then it became one of the things that she was really well known for. Another thing is colorful timbres, like breathy production, which can be used to color a tone, a phrase, or an entire song sometimes. I'd like to point out that it should not be the default manner in which a singer always sings unless absolutely necessary. Teaching singers to sing with clarity is also important in jazz so that they've got multiple vocal colors from which they can choose. Nasality can also be used as a color, as we know from teaching music theater majors, as a color for specific purposes. So I like to stress that these are choices. They're colorful, they're colors, they're things that we can use from our palette of choices. They're not a default, I have to sing breathy because I've always sung breathy. It's the only way I know how to sing, and leave me alone because it's my style. Well, okay, that's fine. You know, have it your way. But I explain to my students, if they want my help, that their voices will be healthier if we aim to try to bring them back to that neutral baseline voice that has good connection, a nice clean vocal fold closure, which we don't get when we're singing with a lot of breathiness all the time. Then there's overtones and vowel modification. In the book, I've included a vowel chart to show where in the oropharynx the vowels are produced in relation to the tongue, and how they can be tweaked to ease into other vowels for expressive effect, which we do with a little bit of overtone changing and singing. Tierney Sutton is a great example of a singer, a contemporary singer that uses this all the time. And I studied with Tierney at University of Southern California. And so the way she uses her microphone and her vowel melding from one vowel to another vowel is really unique, and it's beautiful. And I recommend that you listen to that as a choice for improvisation. Microphone technique, of course, is something that every jazz singer needs to know how to use. Ornaments are, there are many of them, and they can include the fall off, the shake, the doit, which is doit, that kind of a sound. It's the opposite of a fall off. The flip, the turn, and many others, and they're described in the book in depth. They should be practiced and discussed in the voice studio so students become adept at using them when warranted. The slide, for instance, the scoop, the slide, the smear, those are also ornaments. They tend to be overused sometimes by beginning singers, so it's important to vary the ornaments that you use and use them tastefully in unpredictable ways so that your audience doesn't know by the end of the song that you're going to do exactly the same thing the same way again. That's one of the challenges with singing jazz, to vary your treatment of how you get from one word to another, how you get from one vowel to another. If it's always the same, it'll get boring for your audience. There's no single correct way to sing or approach jazz, and that's a major point in my book. There were a lot of jazz masters in the 20th century that I talk about, and not a single one of them has done the same thing that another one of them did. They all found their own unique way, their own unique niche, and their own approaches to technique, to breathing, to resonance, to phrasing, to expression. And it's worth studying these things. And again, those ideas are peppered throughout the book, and comparisons with what this person did versus what this person did to achieve the same end. They're very different approaches, but they both worked. You can also use techniques brought to us by instrumentalists, and that are put forward by instrumentalists every day. Scales, arpeggios, patterns, practice patterns, sequences, step progressions, repetition, imitation, the transcribing of licks, or a lick is like a motive that somebody else has recorded or performed live. Quotations, and a quotation is when somebody uses in a improvised solo a melody snippet that everybody in the room recognizes. So Ella Fitzgerald did this a lot, and it would make her audience chuckle because they would recognize another song's melody in her scat solo of a completely different song. That's called a quotation, and it's a wonderful thing to use once you become adept enough, and once you've listened to enough songs, and once you've compared songs' harmonic progressions, so that you can get away with that and know that this passage in this particular song matches the same chord progression of this completely different song. So I could actually use the melody of this one here, and people will recognize it and think I'm a genius. So that's what quotation is. Another thing that I stress in this book is let the masters teach you. Listen to great jazz singing. Transcribe improvised solos from both singers and instrumentalists from jazz history that are solos that are accessible to you, and then gradually build your repertoire of transcribed solos. So literally take some manuscript paper. This is what transcribing is. Don't just learn it off a recording and sing it back, but write it down. Make sure your notation matches what is actually being done. And then this is a fabulous exercise to give students to do, because it creates so many strong skills in writing what they hear, taking dictation. It'll help them in their dictation ear training theory classes, and they can more accurately mimic the greats from yesteryear who are teaching them at that moment. One of the things we had to do as jazz majors at USC, on the West Coast USC, was we had to transcribe 32 bars of a solo, an improvised solo, and sing it at our jury and provide our transcription for the jurors to read along with us singing it. So they could see whether we were singing it accurately and also whether we were writing it accurately. So that's a really wonderful skill to be able to have. Not only do you transcribe the melody, but once you can transcribe melodies and sing them back, transcribe the harmony too. Listen to what the bass player is playing. Listen to what the drummer is playing. Listen to what the guitarist is playing. See if you can write it down. Those are really, really good skills for students to have. Work with sing-along tracks, work with live pianists, work with guitarists, and learn to accompany yourself to some degree, even if you're just playing triads off of a lead sheet. If you can accompany yourself while you sing, then you're going to be able to practice more effectively and correct yourself a lot more than if you don't have any piano skills, or if you're playing guitar, accompanying yourself if you don't have any guitar skills. I urge you to study the techniques and the approaches of the greats, attend live jazz performances as often as you can to grow your understanding of the jazz language. And I love this last one. Forgive me. Protect your ears from noise. I don't just mean protect your hearing. I mean protect your inner ear, your musician's ear, from music that is inferior. I said it. Sorry, I had to say it. It's all over the place, right? It's the world we live in, but the less you allow into your brain mediocre music, the more complex art music like classical music and jazz music, the more that's going to mean to you, and the more you will be able to hear beyond the bounds of what you can currently hear. I firmly believe that we just really need to protect our eyes and our ears from things that don't edify them. I'd like to play a sample of Nancy Wilson's video performance, and you're going to see and hear a lot of what I talk about in the book with Nancy. One of the things I love is in this performance, she sings the word photograph right at the beginning. Listen to how she sings it. She inserts an H in the middle of the last syllable. And she does it so exquisitely. She sings photograph, and it's just amazing. But you'll see a lot of amazing artistry from this clip by Nancy.
I don't need your photograph to keep by my bed. Your picture is always in my head. I don't need your portrait, dear, to call you to mind. For sleeping or waking, dear, I find the very thought of you
And I think for sake of time, I'm going to keep on going here. Some resources that I recommended before: Shelley Berg's Jazz Improvisation, The Goal Note Method, publications by Michelle Weir, Bob Stoloff, Joe Raposo, Jamie Abersol, Darman Meter. There are several others that you can see in the bibliography of my book. Also, the NATS endorsed So You Want to Sing Jazz, A Guide for Professionals by Jan Shapiro, which was published not too long ago, is a great resource for you to use. If you're interested in the book, my editor encouraged me to share this with you. There's a 30% discount with the code RLF and F30, and that's Rowman and Littlefield Friends and Family, 30%. So you are welcome to use that if you want. If you want a digital examination copy for your course, if you teach voice pedagogy or something along those lines, you can contact vitalsource.com and ask them for a digital exam copy. Rowman.com has bulk rates for ordering for your courses, and you can find me at the 2022 NATS Conference Rowman and Littlefield booth in the exhibit hall. We're going to have a book signing, and that's very exciting. I just found out yesterday, so that's great news. You can learn more and order from any of these sites. The publisher's website is here, Rowman.com. You can also get it at Amazon, Bookshop, and Golden Lab Bookshop. So these links are, I think Mark has them available in the chat. And if you're interested in more, my website is there. I have a jazz theory column called Anatomy of a Standard, which explores the Great American Songbook and the melding of lyrics and music in enduring works of art from this period. And that's at allaboutjazz.com. It's had 1 million hits, which is thrilling for me. I'm very glad that it's so popular with folks. You can find me on social media, and I'd love to bring a workshop to your school if you're interested. That's the end of my slideshow.
Wonderful. I think yes. Let's give her an applause. Awesome. I thought that was incredible. That was great. I've got a few questions I can ask you from YouTube. So let me back up here. We let's see. Okay, here's a question. Does the book have recordings to reference for those styles, examples, and skills?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I will not just say Nancy Wilson did this, but I'll say, check out The Very Thought of You. Nancy Wilson's The Very Thought of You, and listen for that little H in that word, which I just think is classic.
Okay, so specifically, you tell us which songs to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I use examples that are ubiquitous on YouTube and Spotify and places where you can listen to music. You can find them. They're not obscure.
Well, that's good to know, because we want to be sure we find those. And then the slide deck we have here, is that something we could have available to us? I know we're going to probably have the session available to watch,
Absolutely.
but can we have the slide deck as well?
Send it to you?
Yeah, yep. Could you send it to me, and we'll get it out if you don't mind?
Definitely.
Do we have any questions from people that are present here on Zoom? You can raise your hand. Perhaps, hang on, let me get the gallery so I can see. If you want to raise your hand virtually, or raise your hand, and I'll call on you maybe, and you can unmute, perhaps. Okay, Elijah, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. So I have a question. So how important do you think the melding of instrumental techniques are to training jazz vocalists? So like if a jazz vocalist was to buy a saxophone like etude book and like practice a lot of the etudes out of that, how effective do you think that would be for a vocalist to learn?
I'm not sure of your question. Saxophone etude book? I'm sure any of it, all of it, if it's a jazz etude, absolutely you can do it. Just be sure that you remember that if you're going to check yourself on the piano, it's a transposing instrument, so you'll have to put it back into concert key so that what you're playing on the saxophone is also what you're seeing, and can check yourself on the piano. But absolutely, if you can use those etudes that are already there, definitely, if that helps you to create scat and develops your inner ear and your pitch precision and your tonal center in your inner ear and all kinds of other great skills, absolutely. I've used a variety of materials, whatever I have, so definitely use what you have and adapt it. That's what jazz is about. It's about improvisation. It's not jazz if you didn't improvise anything.
Great. Yes, Rebecca, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hello. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tish, first of all, great job. Wonderful
Thank
stuff.
you.
Really good. My question is more, I guess, about sourcing students. I mean, I have, just FYI, I have a pretty heavy background in vocal jazz, both as a soloist and ensemble work, but I'm not currently affiliated with a university. I was, but I'm not now. I'm an independent, a voice teacher, back to doing a lot of that work, voice and piano, all styles, but CCM, we love, right? All the stuff you said, and the folks, Michelle Weir and Darman Meter, all the vocal jazz folks, great resources. And congratulations on everything. Here's my question. And your website's beautiful and everything, but I don't know what your affiliation is, if you're connected to a university. My question is about how to, market myself to, like, how to get more jazz students, because I really try, as you all know, if you're not affiliated with a major university, right, us classical, I teach classical too, right, us NATS members, you have to teach, if you want to make a living strictly doing music, which is all I do, just as a voice, that's all I do is vocal teaching. You have to be able to go where the demand is. You have to be able to teach what is out there in demand. And a lot of the students that I've had through the years, well, I mean, I've been very blessed and fortunate, but some of the newer, younger ones, they don't even know that they don't know what jazz is, or they don't even know whether or not to like it, because they don't really know what it is.
Right.
So if you could speak to that a little bit, I know you have, it's real easy for you to probably get students because you're I guess a national brand and you're nationally known, but do you have any advice for marketing oneself to get those students? Because we have a wealth of information to give them.
Right. I would suggest, NATS has a great resource online. Make sure that your bio and your
I'm listed.
Yeah, if you're listed, make sure you list that you teach jazz.
Yeah.
And also, social media has done a lot for me. So I recommend just posting things and letting folks know that, like, post Nancy Wilson's video and say, hey, I teach this, if you're interested, I am me, something like that. Find ways to create posts on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, that seems to be helpful, because that's where a lot of the youth, TikTok, make a little TikTok video and maybe sing a little,
Do I have to?
Ask
TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. Okay. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, but TikTok is like,
I understand, but that's where the youth are. So
yeah, right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you. But great job. Really good stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Patsy, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to thank you so much for giving me all this information, and I have to get your book.
Oh, you're welcome.
Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I was getting my master's in classical voice at IU, and I studied with Eileen Farrell, who also had a jazz class.
Yes.
So now she didn't know, she just instinctively did all these things. And so we sort of absorbed them, but we wouldn't have known how to put them in theory or anything. But I really appreciate you doing this, and I'll be more equipped to help my kids. I try to. We have a swing band in our organization for which I teach a children's choir, and there's a adult choir and an orchestra and a swing band. And
Great.
so I've gotten some of my kiddos because I'm not singing much now. I'm getting too old. They want my kiddos to come in and sing, and so I feel better equipped just hearing you. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Virtual hand or real hand? My question for me, are there pieces, songs that you think are good for somebody who's never sung a jazz song, and it would be a good first song to start with, or does it matter?
Oh, it does matter. It does
Yeah.
matter. Yeah, I think very accessible songs. Well, I'm going to point you to this resource. Whoops. The Standards Real Book, the Sure volume.
Mhm.
I love this. It's beat up because I use it all the time. I take things out of here for my youth jazz orchestra rehearsals every Monday night. I work with high school kids, and there's a few singers, but there's also instrumentalists that I'm working with. And this is a really great resource. I'd say Blue Skies is one of the songs that comes to mind first because it's accessible. It's the melody is not difficult, and the range is narrow. So it's a good place to start for people that are just getting started and they don't want to have the challenge of intricate pitches in a melody first. Don't start them with Misty. Misty's difficult to sing. Or Stardust. God forbid. I was singing Stardust in a band when I was 17 years old, but that was me. I would start folks with something a lot more level ground than that.
The book you just showed us. Excuse me, the book you just showed us. Does it have just the melody and
yes,
the
I'm glad
words
you
and
asked.
the chords? Is that it?
Yes. So, for instance, here's Day In, Day Out.
Okay.
It shows you the chord progression and the melody and the lyrics.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the chord progression is vetted by professional jazz musicians, so it's the real thing.
Good. Oh, good.
Yeah. And it's the legal one. For many years, there was an illegal real book going around, and people made you feel guilty for having it at all. So then they got the rights to all these great songs, and they made a legal one. So the Sure is a legal real book.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I'm a preacher's wife, so I've got to be legal.
Great. That's awesome. Anybody else? Raise your hand. Okay, well, it seems like we've asked our questions, but I know I'm interested. I'm going to get your book. Sounds like at least several others here will, and maybe many more after we get this thing circulated. So, Dr. Oney, we thank you so much for your expertise. Phenomenal information. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
And if people want to reach out to you, are you open to that if they want to just through your website?
Sure. My website, tishoney.com.
Okay.
Where are you based out of? Sorry. Where are you based from, Ann? What?
I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm an independent teacher too now.
Okay.
I travel around doing concerts and workshops and master classes. And
you said you're working with a vocal ensemble orchestra. You said a jazz orchestra, voice?
I'm starting my own big band, and I also work with the Greenville Jazz Collective and my combo, which I take on tour here and there.
Wonderful.
That's good.
I'll remember that next time I go down to Greenville. I have some fellow musicians down there that way. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again.
So much to Mid-Atlantic NATS for having me and for inviting me. I'm really so appreciative. I've been a member since '96, and this organization means the world to me. So I'm just grateful to be able to give you back something.
Well, we thank you so much, and blessings to you. For those of us still here, or if you're on YouTube, we do have an 11 a.m. session. I can't currently recall which one we're at. Do you know, Dr. Lewis, offhand?
Yes, we have a double header. With Serena Hill LaRoche and Amber Nicole Dilger talking about mental health for singers on Saturday.
Yes.
And that starts at 11, and it'll be 2 separate presentations and then 1 combined discussion at the end of that. And then there'll be a short break, and we will meet again at 2 to talk about healthy belting strategies with Dr. Wendy.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I hope you can make it. And thanks again, Dr. Oney.
Thank you, Dr. Oney. Thank you, Mark and Jill,
Yes.
for organizing. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Good to see
Bye.
everybody.